Okay, welcome to today's virtual cabinet meeting. Before we start the formal business of the meeting, I must remind you that the meeting is being live streamed to the council's website and YouTube channel. Supporting today's meeting are Mike Hill, Chief Executive, Alison Ball, Director of Resources, and various other officers who are presenting reports. Just to confirm for everybody watching, we have Councillor Michael Payne, Councillor David Ellis, Councillor Gary Gregory, Councillor Henry Wheeler, Councillor Jelly Hollingsworth, Councillor John Clark and Councillor Viv McCrossan. Thank you.
Thank you, and Peter Barnes will be joining us hopefully once the IT sorts itself out. Okay, so we will welcome everybody. So apologies for absence, which they're not. Well, there's only just Peter. He'll be in soon, hopefully, if the connections work. You're asked to approve it, item 2, to approve as correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 11th of February 2021. That's on pages 5 to 9. I'll move that. Can we have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thank you. Are we agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. We don't need a vote on that, do we, Alec?
No, it's fine, Leader.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll move on to declarations of interest, and I'll do one as a non-pecuniary interest for all of us because we're all trustees in King George V playing field, which is where are we at item 6? So that's for all cabinet members declaring their non-pecuniary interest in that. Okay.
John, just on that item, if I may as well, it's Michael. I don't think this is a pecuniary interest or a private interest, but I'm declaring it for transparency on behalf of me and you, John, as county councillors, that the green space strategy may well make reference to land that is close by boundaries or mixed provision with the county council. Obviously, Bestwood Country Park is jointly managed by the Borough Council and the county council, and myself and the leader, Councillor John Clark, are county councillors. We do also both sit on the Fire Authority, and the headquarters of the Fire Authority obviously does sit alongside a piece of green space that the Borough Council owns. So I'm just declaring it for transparency purposes on the public record.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, we're agreed. We'll move on now to item 4, which is Station Road and Burton Road regeneration sites. That was a document which followed. It's quite a long one. It's on which you should have all had, but although it's apologies for it being a bit late, but that's on pages 3 to 115, and this is a report of the head of regeneration and welfare. So Joelle, somewhere. Is Joelle moving? Where is she?
Afternoon, Chair. I'm here.
Hiding in the middle of the screen.
Thank you. And as Councillor Clark's mentioned, apologies for the lateness of this coming round, but we wanted to make sure that we've got all the accurate information in the business case to support it. So this report seeks approval for the preferred delivery route to ensure that the sites at Burton Road and Station Road are redeveloped for affordable housing and temporary accommodation. The details of the recommendations are contained within the report, and I'm going to discuss each one of them in turn. Before I do, I just want to highlight that this report is part of a series of reports brought to Cabinet recently to update members on the joint work that is being done by the Strategic Housing Team and the Housing Needs Team on temporary accommodation and the wider housing related issues. So it's very exciting that I get to present this one. This is the final one, I think, of 3 that we've brought to Cabinet, and hopefully it means now that we can move on to delivery and can actually see real action. We, of course, couldn't do the work without the support from our legal and finance teams as well, and so it's been a real one-team effort to bring these reports to Cabinet. As members are aware, the Council owns 2 small sites at Burton Road and Station Road in Carlton, and these are shown in Appendix A and B of the Cabinet report. I'm going to just give you a bit of a background to each of the sites, and then I'm going to talk you through the options for the delivery mechanisms. Now, I'm conscious there's a lot of detail within the report, but also within the detailed business case. So what I'm going to try and do with this is just to try and pick out the key parts for you. So in relation to Burton Road, the Council purchased number 23 in 1978 with the restriction that it was only to be used for housing. Since then, the adjacent shops became derelict and became a cause of concern amongst local residents and councillors due to their dilapidated appearance. Therefore, in June 2018, Cabinet approved the decision to acquire the adjacent shops, which was number 25, 27 and 29, with a view to demolishing the properties and to redevelop the site as affordable housing. At the time, it was also agreed to work in partnership with a housing provider to deliver the site. The following spring, the buildings were all demolished and it remains a cleared site. Since then, there's been various plans drawn up for the site to inform the preferred option, and this has shown that we can accommodate 7 two-bedroom flats on the site. In relation to the site at Station Road, the southern part of the site was owned by the council all the way back since 1894, and the site comprised of 3 buildings which date back from the late 1800s, with a large centre in the site, a large yard in the centre of the site. In 2016, the council took ownership of the remaining site, and since then the buildings have been demolished in August 2020. There have been various plans drawn up similar to what we've done with Burton Road, and again the capacity of the site shows that there are the ability to accommodate around 10 two-bedroom flats. Now, as reported previously to Cabinet, officers have been exploring delivery options for housing development and delivery in line with the corporate plan priorities. Officers have identified a number of objectives that need to be considered when we look at how we might deliver sites. And for these sites, the main priorities that we've considered is securing best value. Now, this means not only the overall value or economic or financial factors, but also wider considerations such as corporate aims and social value. Second priority is to make sure that we meet the Gedling plan priorities wherever possible, and specifically to make sure that we redevelop vacant or underused sites for new affordable housing or temporary accommodation. And the third priority is to encourage the wider regeneration of the areas in the borough. There's also a number of other matters considered as part of the detailed plan case preparation, and these are referred in the report at paragraph 1.11. Furthermore, a series of issues and risks were also identified as part of the process, and these are summarised in paragraph 1.12. There are also a number of legal implications that have also been considered, and these are detailed in section 5 of your report. So as part of all the work and as part of the process, officers identified 5 different delivery options. Now, these are detailed in the business case, but just to run through them, option 1 was to dispose of the sites, so essentially sell them on the open market. The second option is to redevelop them for other uses, such as commercial, retail or leisure purposes. The third option is to have residential on the site, but to either sell them or to rent them out privately by the council. The fourth option was to have housing on the site for council-owned houses or temporary accommodation. And then the fifth option is to have housing, but in partnership with a registered provider. So officers, through the business case process, has looked at all the various constraints or the recent and previous decisions made on the sites, and we discounted the first 3 options. Now, the full reasons for this are identified and included in paragraphs 1.14 and all the way through to 1.17. What it meant is it's left the options, there's 2 remaining options of options 4 and 5, which was to put housing on the site, either by the council or be the registered provider. So today, officers have come in with a commentary in terms of the comparison of those 2 options, and to make sure that we've outlined what the best value for the council is and the considerations for Cabinet to consider. As I say, all of this is detailed in section 3.3, but I would just like to summarise that out of those 2 remaining delivery options, both of them do meet the corporate priorities of redeveloping vacant sites for affordable housing or temporary accommodation. Now, at this current time, for these 2 specific sites, it is felt that having full control of them, their construction and their long-term management is the preferred route. This will give officers the optimum flexibility for us to be able to respond to the changing demands for temporary accommodation over time, but also ensure that officers are best placed to care for our most vulnerable residents in the borough. The council will be able to be more responsive and take control of any arising issues or needs without being reliant upon a third party or the housing provider. There are ongoing risks and implications for doing this, but as the financial appraisal work shows, these costs can be accommodated within the income generated from renting the units. And so on this basis, as long as we can charge over the social rents, it would not cause an ongoing revenue subsidy to the council. So with all of that in mind, and I'm conscious there is a lot of information within the report, I just want to talk through the 4 recommendations in the Cabinet report. So the first one, officers are seeking Cabinet approval to redevelop these sites for affordable housing and use as temporary accommodation, and for the council to do this ourselves as opposed to working with a housing provider. With this approval, officers will then work up the final schemes for both sites and update the accompanying detailed business case. And alongside this, it means that we can then start working on submitting the planning application and procuring contractors to move on to the delivery phase. The second recommendation is, as further input is required in relation to the detailed designs of the sites, and prior to the planning application being submitted, we are seeking a delegation for the Chief Executive to approve the final designs and submit the planning application in conjunction with the leader. Just want to flag up here, there are a number of matters that we need to finalise before we can do that, and these are detailed within the report. But essentially, the council would need to agree rent levels for the properties with Homes England and or the Secretary of State if we can get to charge affordable rents. And we do detail the various options and the financial work as part of the business case. The second thing that we need to have a look at is to see if we can secure any further funding. So there is an opportunity now, as we've become a registered provider, to apply for further funding from Home England. And the third aspect is that one of the key risks that we've identified is the right to buy. And part of the process means that we can consider an option to implement a cost floor. Now, this means that actually it will significantly reduce the risk of right to buy, because we'll be able to recover any cost that we've spent on the properties. So again, officers are considering the opportunity of having a corporate policy linked to that. The third recommendation, as detailed in your report, is as in order to be able to progress with these sites for affordable housing, officers will need to submit an application to the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. This is to secure a waiver to the statutory requirement to open a housing revenue account for any affordable or social units constructed on the site, and to set affordable rent levels. So therefore, officers are seeking approval to commence this process, so this does not delay the delivery of these sites once the final design, business case and planning application have been resolved. And then finally, the fourth recommendation is that the council would need to agree with Homes England and or the Secretary of State to charge affordable rent for these properties. Officers are therefore seeking approval to submit an application for necessary consents to charge affordable rent for the housing which isn't retained as temporary accommodation units. So, Chair, that's my presentation of the report. I'm conscious there's a lot of information within it, and so I'm happy if there are any questions to try and answer them for members.
Thanks, Joelle. Can we just straighten the item 2 out, and we'll add to that not just a chief executive. I mean, we will have the chief executive, myself as leader, and Jenny Hollinsworth as the portfolio. So that there's 3 names to go into that second one. So I'm amending that. Okay, I don't know if there's any technical thing we need to do to amend it. And just before I bring people in, reminding people and people that are listening to this has done, you know, a tremendous amount of work gone into that, and the difficult sites, the topography of particularly Burton Road is very difficult, because I'm not quite sure it's got 1, 2 or 3 different places that levels, etc. And also against the background of the severe cuts that this council has had to make. So there are difficulties, and we're still doing it, and we still haven't got and other people will repeat this, and we still have not got the benefit of these levelling up funds, which I'm not quite sure the sums are now for that, but certainly the High Streets Fund with £25 million that was deposited on some blessed councils recently, certainly not ones with the colour of this authority. But anyway, having a little groan there and a little moan, I'll call for people to make some comments. Thank you. Any comments? Jenny? Sorry.
Thanks,
Sorry,
Leader.
Peter just walked in. Sorry, that's it.
Thanks, Leader. Yes, just to thank Joe and the team and everybody else that's been involved in producing this report. It's incredibly comprehensive, very detailed, and explains the options very well. We know that COVID has thrown into relief the issue of homelessness, but it's worthwhile pointing out it's not a new issue. This has been an increasing problem for some years now, as Councillor Wheeler will know, with his responsibility for homelessness and temporary accommodation. It's really important we get on with these. Unfortunately, we know that across the country there are around 700,000 people in rent arrears. Some of those will be people in Gedling. So we could well see an increase in the need anyway. And if you look at the report, the gap between what is available and what is needed is huge. So this is a really important part of our plan to address the issue. It's been on the agenda for some time. I'm really pleased to see this. They've not been easy sites to get a case together for. I'm really pleased to see this here, and I really look forward to the developments coming forward in the next 18 months or so. And thanks very much to all who've brought this forward.
Thank you, Jenny. Michael's showing there. Yeah, Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I just wanted to pay tribute to particularly Jenny Hollingsworth and Henry Wheeler as cabinet members who have driven at this issue, but the wider cabinet, but also, as Jenny says, to Joelle and to the strategic housing team and the housing need team, but also the work that's gone on in the background around the financial business case. So, to Alison and the finance team and to Mike Hill for their support. This is, dealing with, as Jenny says, an issue of the council over a number of years having had to fund bed and breakfast accommodation, temporary accommodation for people, because we haven't had the availability to support people in any other way. And we know the real human consequences of that are potentially sometimes people having to be housed outside of the borough, away from their children's schools, and having to then travel. Often these people have got complex needs, have got particular issues in terms of their own personal circumstances, the stresses and strains that brings, but also obviously the cost to the taxpayer and to the council of having to fund that bed and breakfast accommodation. And I think it's a crying shame that we live in one of the richest countries in the world, and yet we've still got, as Jenny says, dire issues right across the country, not only here in Gedling, with people who haven't got a decent home, above their head. So I think this is a real credit to Gedling Borough Council that we brought this forward, that we will now be able to bear down on that bed and breakfast cost, that we will be able to get people into decent quality accommodation where we do need to get them into temporary accommodation. The only thing that sort of, strikes me in terms of a question is, notwithstanding the fact that we know housing benefit needs to be uplifted by the government, notwithstanding the cuts that there have been to other support through the welfare reforms by this Conservative government, and notwithstanding the issues in relation to the fact that this needs to balance for the council in terms of its medium-term financial plan, because, as the leader said, we still are the worst affected council for the second year running in the country in terms of our funding position. Do we need there to be a revenue subsidy from this scheme, and therefore do we need those remaining units to be charged at affordable level, or could they be at a lower level, either local housing association type level or social rent type level? So that's a question really for Alison, I think, if she's on the call. And I know Alison does a really good job of managing our finances. No doubt she'll tell me that yes, we do need a subsidy given some of the uncertainties and ongoing cuts that we get from government. But you would expect me to ask that question, Alison, because obviously we're dealing here with some of the most vulnerable people in society. And it's not Gedling Borough Council's fault that they might not be able to afford that rent. In my view, it's a failure of our society and a failure of our government that we still allow people to be in this position. I guess the final thing I'd say, Leader, is that whatever the response from Alison is in response to that question, I'm proud of the fact that as a borough council, we're one of the only councils in the country that has a 100% council tax reduction scheme, protecting over 4,800 families from being pushed into deprivation and poverty in terms of their council tax liability. And certainly I'm sure that will provide some mitigation and support for some of these tenants should they be occupying the accommodation. But it'd be interesting to hear from Alison specifically on that question. But the broader point, Leader, is that people should be commended. I think this is a step in the right direction. We inherited a diabolical situation in 2011 when we took control of this council, John, in terms of temporary accommodation. I remember you and I walking around the flats at Woollerton Avenue, which were nothing short of a disgrace. And work has gone on to invest in those sites. Good work has gone in the last 10 years. But as Jenny says, this is a mammoth problem, not only for Gedling, but for the wider country. And you can't turn these things round overnight. And you do need a government that doesn't just believe in shrinking the state, but that does believe in investing in public services to resolve these issues. So credit to people, very good report, well presented, Joelle, today at the meeting, and a particular thanks to the housing need team who are on the front line, the coalface of this. I've had 3 or 4 housing cases, piece of casework coming in the last 2 days, people overcrowded, people struggling to support their families off the back of COVID, and these are the very real impacts of this situation, and this will go some way to mitigate those issues. So, thank you to everybody, and thank you to Jenny and Henry in the Cabinet and you, Leader, for pushing this forward.
Thanks, Michael. It's also the fact that I don't know when the date is yet, but it keeps getting pushed back because of COVID, and that is when people start chasing debt. And once people start chasing debt, and I think it's been mentioned by everybody up to now, that is when we're going to get a real knock on the door here. And hopefully we'll be able to help some of those people, but it will need somebody with a bigger purse than we've got to help us. Viv, I see you indicating.
Yep. Just to again thank everybody in terms of this report, and obviously my colleagues, I echo everything that everybody said. I mean, and just to sort of say, really repeat what Michael has said. I mean, it's shocking in this day and age that we're putting families in bed and breakfast accommodation. I mean, the impact on children's emotional health and well-being in terms of living in one room in a bed and breakfast, and the stigma that is for those children then going into school, etc., is immense. So, anything we can do to eliminate, just get rid of bed and breakfast. So this is a start. So I commend everything that we're doing in our borough against all odds to give our families better qualities of life. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anybody else. So just say Peter just popped in to say that they're trying to find another computer for him because that's gone AWOL. And I've just seen Alison is going to tell us all about the finance, aren't you, Alison, after all those sleepless nights trying to make it work. Okay.
I'll put my mic down. Yes, I was just wanted to come in and answer Michael's question. So the funding of the scheme that as we've got it at the moment, obviously premised on quite a lot of borrowing. So we're using as much affordable Section 106 monies as we have. But does leave a level of borrowing that we have to finance. So the modelling with it that we've completed within the business case, we've done on all levels of rent, the 3 options that we have. And unfortunately, when we use the social rent level, it doesn't cover the costs and would require a subsidy from the general fund, which obviously we would be wanting to avoid because that can't be contained within our current budget. But the rent levels that are currently showing in the main body of the report are actually set at the local housing allowance rate. So that is the rate that's actually we can currently the tenant can actually get benefit on, and that at that level. So if somebody is entitled to housing benefit, then they would be have their rent covered. And at that level, this does show a financially viable scheme for us. So that's the position that we have, and so it's not at the upper end of the affordable rents, which are quite considerably higher. So £148 per week compared to £126 per week is quite different. So I suppose what we'll be looking for as we actually go through and develop the final cost of the scheme and the final funding package will be to set the rent level appropriate for in relation to that. So if there is an option that we might get some further funding towards the scheme, which will then shift that affordability level for us. So yeah, at the moment we'll be looking for the local housing allowance rent, which isn't at the top end.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. I did mention those long hours you've put into this, along with Joe and the team. Joel, there's a lot of hours gone into that. I can see Peter in the background. You see socially distanced.
John, can I just come back on that point? Thanks, Alison. I mean, I think that response underscores one thing, doesn't it? Look how much more we could do if we actually had investment from the government in our general fund. If we hadn't had 5.8 million stripped out from the council, in the last few years, look how much more we could have done. The fact we were able to keep it at £126 a week and not the upper 148, we could have got down to those social rents if we hadn't had 65p in every pound stripped out of the general fund. So I welcome Alison's clarification from a financial perspective, and I do hope that the government might see this as an example of best practice, invest in it to allow us, as Alison said, to keep those costs as low as possible for the families who are going to be relying on. But pleased to hear that they will be able to cover their costs, predominant amount of their costs from the housing benefit element, Alison, for those who are on housing benefit. And just echo what the leader said, thank you for your work, Alison, in terms of making this all stack up.
They need to take the blue glasses off, Michael. I'm afraid they're colourblind at the moment when it's distributing funds in this country. Peter, I can just see you. Gary? Yeah. Peter, do you want to say anything? I know we're struggling with your IT. Just a minute. You're on mute. You're on mute. Press it, please. Help. Press mute. Unmute.
We're doing it. I just think we ought to praise the department how much work they've gone into to get this budget for it, because under the present circumstances, as Michael said, it's been very, very difficult. And I still think that we've done a tremendous job in what we've done at Gedling Borough Council. I mean, I've been on this council best part of 40 years, and these are the worst 4 or 5 years we've had from central government funding for Gedling Borough Council. So I think, on the whole, I think the staff could be proud on what they've achieved and what the government, or what this local authority has done for Gedling Borough, because we probably second to none what we've done, and I think we ought to be all extremely proud of what we've achieved at Gedling Borough Council. Thank you.
Thank you. So there's no further comments from anywhere. We've thanked everybody. No, there's no more. I don't see any more. So I'll move the recommendation if Jenny can second it.
Leader, can I just clarify that for recommendation 2, you're changing it to delegates authority?
We just add in the portfolio holder, Jenny Hollingsworth.
Consultation with the leader and portfolio holder.
Yeah, that's it.
That's fine. So you're voting on the revised recommendation now.
Okay. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for that. So all those in favour? Do we have to? I mean, we can see it. Do we go through it?
Yeah, everybody can see now, so we can just use our actual hands rather than.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. And we'll move. Thanks, Joel. We'll move on now to item 5, performance indicators. Alison should bounce up on the screen somewhere.
Doing me, I think, leader.
Is it you? You're doing it, are you? Right.
Yes.
Go on then. Go on then. We'll draw you out off your holidays to do it.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, leader. So the Gedling Plan 2020 to 2023 was updated and approved by full council a couple of weeks ago, and this set out a number of actions and priorities for the council. To enable this monitoring and measurement of the progress against the Gedling Plan actions, a suite of performance indicators have been developed and are provided in this report for approval. You will note, leader, that due to the COVID pandemic, a number of the indicators that we would previously have had targets set have actually been changed to trackers this year. And that is simply because we really don't know where we are on the COVID situation, particularly around leisure and the number of users that will come back to the centres once we open. So So you'll note there, Leader, that, as I say, there are more trackers than usual in this suite of performance indicators presented here today. However, the majority of those indicators have remained the same challenging targets as we had in the previous year, but there are 4 being increased this year as set out in paragraph 2.4, and these relate to the work of the customer services team, the number of social media followers, which has gone from strength to strength. Similarly, with Keep Me Posted subscribers, again, the numbers are rapidly increasing, which is really, really positive, and delivery of the number of affordable homes. Just for the reverse of that, there are 6 performance indicators that are actually being reduced, and these should be no surprise to Cabinet members, as we've discussed these on a regular basis throughout the budget monitoring reports, the performance indicator reports during the current year. So these relate to temporary accommodation. We've already discussed that angle, so that is one we are struggling to meet the target, and we have set a more realistic target moving forward. Housing benefits has dropped slightly by 1 day. This again reflects the difficulties we've had with the COVID and the sheer number of claimants now that we're processing. And similarly, the number of planning applications. We did set previously a really high, huge target for planning, and again, this is just not possible at the current moment in time. So we have eased those slightly as well in the report, Chair. So Leader, the recommendation is on page 11, and it is to approve the performance indicators as set out in this report. Thank you.
I think you're on mute, John.
I wanted to sneeze, so I thought I wouldn't make you all jump. Yeah, Michael, do you want to come in there?
I think the thing to say is it's very easy, isn't it, in the current climate to focus on those few areas where we have had to slightly shift our targets. And I use the word slightly there as a phrase that I think needs to be focused on, because those tweaks you've just talked about, Mike, are very slight tweaks to the target. I think what gets lost if you're not careful is that actually of the scores and scores of other performance indicators, we're meeting them, or we're overshooting them. And I think to have been doing that in the middle of an international pandemic, as well as having supported our more vulnerable people through the Giving for Gedling humanitarian hub and the support to the NHS we're giving in terms of the vaccination rollout, I think is tremendous. And let me just say, while we're on that point, I know there have been a lot of people wandering around in the last few weeks taking all sorts of credit for the vaccination rollout in Gedling, but let's just be absolutely crystal clear with the Secretary of State. This has happened because of our local doctors. This has happened because of our local NHS nurses. This has happened because of Gedling Borough Council staff and the Borough Council standing up the Richard Herod Leisure Centre. It hasn't happened because of people swanning up to the centre, taking the photo, wandering off and then sending a press release to the Gedling Eye. And I think it does a huge discourtesy to those people who have grafted alongside the many residents who are volunteers down at the Richard Herod, for people to be trying to claim credit for something they've had very little involvement in. The plaudits deserve to go to those NHS heroes, those volunteers heroes from our residents, and to our Richard Herod staff and other Gedling Borough staff, including those who have actually finished their day shift for the council and then gone down to the Richard Herod and have been jabbing people. So I just want to put that on the record, John, because I think it does nobody a service when politicians are swanning around trying to claim credit for something that they've had very little involvement in. And while I'm on it, John, it's all right saying thank you to these NHS nurses. It's about time some of these people gave them a decent pay rise as well. Happy to clap them one week, but when it comes to paying them a decent pay award, they've turned their back on them. And they deserve a lot better than that. Some of these people, John, your relatives included, have been caring for us in the toughest of times, and they don't deserve to be treated in this derisory way by their national government. But on these targets, Mike, great job by you and the team at the council. You've kept the ship running at the same time as supporting our community through a pandemic, and certainly from the residents I talked to in the borough, they're very, very grateful. And I think you and the team, Mike, deserve plaudits for continuing to steer the ship through a very, very difficult time, not only for our community, but for the country more broadly as well.
Thanks, Michael. Just in case somebody think we've missed people off the list there, it's Mel's team down at the bottom, which have been pulled from pillar to post, particularly our waste collectors, and the sort of hidden things that, you know, you shove your bin out, you pull it back in, done. And you don't really think what's, you know, those people have been there every day. They've not had the comfort of, you know, being at home all the way through. And I'm not saying some people like home working, some people don't, but they've been absolute heroes there. And yeah, just to back that up, one of my daughters who works for the blood service was saying the other day, which is NHS, said we haven't had a rise since 2011. And I think it's 2021 now, and that is factual. I checked it with Unison yesterday. They have not had a rise since 2011. So some people do need to get the facts right when they're putting things out. But is there anybody else on this? You know, I've got one, might be a bit thorny, this one, Mike. We're working from home. We've altered some of the targets or the performance indicators. Can we have a reason why they've altered? Not now. At another point. So can I have a reason as to why, you know, if we're working from home, I thought it was just now we got the technology in place, apart from Peter's computer, that we there must be something. It's just something for, you know, when we debrief over how we did, what we did good, what we did well, what was a problem to us, when we get that actually, you know, really on paper, they're written down and we start to debate it after COVID, hopefully it's gone out the window and away. What caused those figures to, you know, for us to adjust it or just to track? I can understand by the tracking and I'm fine with it, but people will say to me, and I'm saying devil's advocate here, the layperson will say, well, OK, you've got these people at home. Shouldn't the service be more or less? I'm particularly looking at planning and things like that. Shouldn't it be more or less the same because they're working from home? I don't know what the answer to is. I don't want that today, but if it's something to think about when we do our debrief, right the way across the council to what we did well and what we didn't do so well. Thank you. Are there any more speakers?
Thank you, Leader.
Yeah, thank you. Any more? But like Michael, thank everyone for their efforts, which are still difficult times, and I think they'll go on probably to this time next year, but don't want to depress everybody on that. So I'll move the recommendations, which are on page 11.
Seconded.
Okay,
Second, yeah.
we agreed. So just a hands as long as they're seen on the screen, we're fine. You all right, Viv? David? Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to the next one, which is item 6, and that is found on page 21 to 46. Provision of a new toilet block in King George V Park. And I say I'll move that, and I think David will second it. Is there? David? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
You're going to second that, aren't you? The provision of toilet block in King George V Park. And that's a report of the head of environment. So that'll come under you, Mel, will it?
It does, John, yeah.
Thank you. So do you want to speak to it?
Yeah, so the report's to seek approval to build a new toilet block with changing places facility in the garden area of King George V Park in Arnold as part of ongoing green space improvements to parks facilities within the borough. The park has a long history, but in essence in 1988 the land was registered as a charity, with the sole trustees of the charity being Gedling Borough Council. In February of this year, the King George V Playing Field charity met, and in their capacity as acting trustees of the charity considered whether a proposal to develop a toilet and changing place facilities on the park, aligned with the objective of the charity, was in accordance with the restrictions on the land from the 1950 conveyance, and it determined in that meeting that the development of a toilet and changing places facility on the land did align with the objects of the charity and the restrictions on the conveyance, and agreed with the proposals for the development on that basis. King George V Park, central to Arnold and the town centre, adjacent to the new market development, and nearby toilets in Wood Street are internally in a poor state of repair now, and no longer possible to keep them properly clean and free from offensive odours. In this context, as part of ongoing green space improvements to parks facilities within the borough, a new toilet facility for both residents and visitors to the park offers a way forward. And the project serves to keep the land as a recreation ground for the benefit of parks users and the community and public at large. Officers have undertaken surveys within the park with parks users, and overwhelmingly, once again, the consultation has come back that the facility is approved, and residents were very keen on such a building being established in the park. We did look at desktop feasibility in terms of the location. 3 locations were offered. One was on the footprint of the car park. The issue with that was one of disability access, because the incline into the car park for access is too steep for wheelchair. So that wasn't a chosen location. Another one that was discussed was within the existing clubhouse. But for any that know, the clubhouse is right at the back of the park in a very inaccessible area, and there are links and issues with drainage for the sewerage. So that wasn't considered suitable either. Another chosen location was right at the front on the road. But because of the history of the park and the amenity in terms of it having a balanced wall with central gates, wasn't considered to be the best location. And the 4th location was actually in the rest garden area adjacent to the car park to allow access from both the car park and through the gates of the park as well. And that was chosen as the best and most suitable location. So that is the recommended location. In terms of planning and design, we're looking at a change in places facility, and then a male, female and a disabled toilet facility as well, with access from external doors to stop people from congregating in foyer areas within the building, so for security. And also there would be a service building behind that could service the latrines and the tanks and things like that. We have CCTV currently in the park, and obviously that camera technology will be used to enhance security around the building. And we will also be installing further lighting within the park so that the area remains safe and secure for users into the future. So in terms of financial implications, there's a budget for £120,000 set aside for that development. And in essence, the recommendations are to approve the proposal for the new public toilet block and changing places facility in King George V Park in Arnold, as detailed in the report and subject to planning permission and further design amendments and costs remaining within the approved budget, and to delegate authority to the Chief Executive in consultation with the leader to approve the final design scheme for the toilet block and changing places facility for submission for planning permission, and to allocate the current approved capital scheme for the provision of public toilets approved as part of the 21-22 budget to the King George V Park toilet block.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, David. Do you want to say something?
Yes, please, and thank Mel for the report, which I fully support. And so any comments I make, of course, are without prejudice to when the report itself, the planning permission comes to planning committee. But it's very clearly a facility that is wanted in the area, despite some of the slightly scurrilous news reports that have been recently. You know, people in Arnold, people who use George V, want to have the facilities there, and it just makes it more of a destination venue than it is at present. And Mel's reassurance that it'll be well designed, the CCTV will work, it'll be lit and secure, which should go to reassure people that it's an asset. And I think it's where it's going to be central to Arnold. Just is indicative of the investment that this council is making, despite all the restrictions. And Michael was saying, despite the fact that we've been overlooked for the town's fund and all the other slush funds that seem to find their way to places like Newark, despite all that, the council is investing in Arnold, improving the high street and the shopping facility and shopping experience in Arnold, just as we are in Carlton Square. So I fully support this, and I look forward to it happening. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Viv? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to Hi. Yeah, thanks, Mel, for your work on this. I mean, I just feel I'm really thrilled that we're going to have a decent toilet in Arnold. It's going to make such a difference to families with disabled children or disabled adults. It's going to make such a difference to their lives that they can join in, they can go shopping, they can spend the day out without worrying about where are they going to be able to get access to a toilet. So I think this is really going to improve the lives of many of our residents in the borough. It's and it's a credit to us at this difficult time that we are able to put such a valuable resource into the community of Arnold. And like you say, it fits so nicely as well in terms of what we are doing to make Arnold a destination choice, people to come to Arnold to do their shopping, come to Arnold for a day out, to meet family and meet friends. And I just think this will make such a difference. So yeah, I'm thoroughly supportive of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
Yeah, just follow on from what Councillors Ellis and McCrossan said. You just reflect back, John, when I was brought up in Arnold, and it just feels like we've lost so much over the last 10 years. And one of the things I think across the country, but in our own community, we've lost is investment in these key public services, including toilets. And we all need to go to the toilet. This affects everybody when you're out and about. And I was listening to a radio programme last year that was talking about particularly people with severe disabilities who couldn't go out and about and do the things that most of us take for granted, like going for a walk, in the countryside, going to do a bit of shopping in a market town, because actually they could find themselves up to a 2-hour drive, John, across the country away from a facility, a toilet that was suitable for them to use, i.e. a changing in places facility. For those who don't know what they are, they're a facility that do provide for people with the most severe disabilities, often who rely on having carers with them while they're out and about. And I think what I'm really proud of, John, is not only have we got a change in places toilet for those people with severe disabilities at the Country Park. We're one of the first in Nottinghamshire to open one. We've also got some in our leisure centres across the borough, but now we're going to have one in Arnold Town Centre. And I think, John, that shows a sense of care and compassion. And it shows actually we can return to a society where we invest in our public services, because if this last year has taught us anything, it's that a decade of cuts has left us very ill prepared to deal with a pandemic and has left us without some of these crucial facilities. And, I think everybody would recognise, John, within our borough that in the last year we've become to enjoy and appreciate the great outdoors and the green spaces we've got even more. And as Councillor Ellis said, if you're out and about shopping or visiting the new market that this council's investing in that will be open in a year's time, and you need to go to the toilet, you don't want to have to traipse through a pub. You don't want to have to go through a busy supermarket. You don't have to go to a cafe that have already got constraints in terms of the space they've got. You want to go to a decent, well looked after public toilet where you're not discriminated against if you've got a disability or issues in terms of access. So I'm incredibly proud of this. I think Mel and the team, the chief exec, the entire team have put forward this proposal, have done a good job. Obviously, the trustees came together and agreed that this was a really good idea. And as David says, it sits very neatly alongside the investment this council is placing in Arnold, the market, the new investment at the Bonington Theatre, the upgrade to the changing rooms and swimming pool at Arnold Leisure Centre, the wider investment in the town centre, the renovation and refurbishment of the pavilion that was left dilapidated before we took control of this council. King George V has got a great history in Arnold, as Mel says. It's a beautiful piece of green space. And I would like to see in the future, John, once we've got this new public toilet provision, once we've got that pavilion open for the cricketers and the young football teams there that use it, and other residents who are now coming forward who want to be doing things around social isolation, why don't we set out some ambition for that part? Why don't we have a community orchard on that part? Why don't we have some wildflower corridors around the outside to support our bees and pollinators, as this council set out to do? It's a stunning green space right in the heart of the town centre that most towns would give their right arm to have. And I'm pleased to see that this council is investing in that fantastic facility. And I'm pleased to see that those people who have got the severest disabilities in society will now be able to do the most decent thing and the most simplistic thing that we all take for granted, which is if you're out and about, go into the loo, rather than being charged £1 or having to wander through a private establishment to go to the toilet. So I'm really pleased. And, you know, for those who have got concerns about will this bring antisocial behaviour, I think Councillor Ellis and Mel Cry have allayed some of that. But, you know, be under no illusion, this council takes a zero tolerance approach to antisocial behaviour. And if we do see people trying to trash these facilities or trash that park, we will come down very heavily on them, and we'll work with our colleagues in the police to find them and deal with them, because these facilities are there for all to enjoy, and it's important that we protect them. So great report, John, delivering on a manifesto pledge that we made in the 2015 election, and it's the first step. Many more public toilets around Gedling Borough to come. This council delivering for its local residents and its local businesses.
Thank you, Michael. Thanks for that passion there, because that's quite clear. You know, a lot of people did say that, oh, they'll just wreck them. We'll just wreck them. Well, I think we go. Is it back to Mayor Giuliano in with the breaking glass in New York, where they, you know, and we had that in Nottingham, if you remember, with all the glass bus shelters, and they were smashed and smashed and smashed, but eventually they weren't smashed, and there's the odd one that's smashed now, not in more by accident than anything else. I think we've got to persevere with that. We've got to think out of the box, and this is what this council do, and this is the first of hopefully many. I think also is the thinking like this compassionate side of it, which you say this is unlocking people's lives, unlocking people that have got severe disabilities who are frightened. You know, there's enough with COVID, but who are frightened. I don't go out there for more than half an hour because I may need the loo, and my partner cannot help me or assist me, and we will have the facilities there because it'll have that as we've got up at the country park. I'm really proud to see that. And similar to our COVID stone, when we first said to people, said, well, what are you doing that for? Well, if you look at the response to the COVID stone in Arnold and the other monuments that will go around the borough, it's correct, and we're thinking like the people there, and we put some real compassion because it's been a very difficult time, and this will ease people. I say it is unlocking people from their own prisons in a way, because they're able to go out there. And I love the idea that you're stating there about the bees in that park, the wildflowers bits. You just look at it as we did the other day and thought, well, it's a piece of grass. You know, the first thing I'd remove is the what do they call it? Where they run up and down on the roller skates and things like that. I wouldn't do away with it. I'd move it. Whoever designed that to put it in the middle of a park, I thought they got that wrong. I think the pen slipped. It should have gone to one side or the other. But anyway, we'll look at that. So, is anybody else wants to say anything on this? Nobody there. Is Peter around still? Gary? No.
Just a quickie.
Is it working? No. Okay. I'll move the recommendation. Sorry.
I think Peter should be working, John.
Peter.
Just want to say what Michael said. What Michael said was absolutely bang on stream. What we've got in Arnold Hill Park is what we need on that playing field, because the toilets on Wood Street was far out of the shopping centre. This is far better for the people in the community, generally speaking. So it's an asset to the borough, and we should be very, very proud of what we've achieved. Thank you, John.
Thank you. So with that, there's no one else. I'll move the thank everyone. Mel, please pass that back to the teams who have put this together. We're on page 21, and there are 3 items on the recommendation. It's been moved by myself. It's been seconded by David Ellis. Are we all in agreement?
Yep.
I see all the hands. Yes, thank you. Thanks a lot. We'll move on. If we're still with you, Mel, don't run away yet. And we're on page 47 now. This is agenda item 7, and this is the green space strategy, which is, I'll hold it up in case anybody ever looks at this, but there it is. And it's a great document. So would you like to lead us into that, Mel?
Thank you, Chair. The purpose of this report is to adopt the Gedling Borough Council Green Space Strategy for 2021 to 26. A key decision in that it does affect more than 2 wards within the borough. In 2012, the council published its green space strategy. This lasted until 2017, when it was identified that it needed a complete refresh and republication. That work's now been undertaken, and a new all-encompassing revised green space strategy document has now been produced. Unlike green infrastructure strategies, green space strategies work within the typology of public recreational amenity and open space identified in the local planning document 20 of the Gedling local plan. These typologies are evaluated within set authority scales, and issues are noted in relation to condition, quality and access. And this information is then used to inform the strategy and an action plan that is found at the back of the strategy, which sets future management and regeneration policies. The topologies covered are parks and gardens, natural and semi-natural green spaces, amenity green spaces, provision for young people and children, outdoor sports facilities, allotments and community gardens, cemeteries and closed churchyards, and green corridors. And audits based on quality, quantity and accessibility have been undertaken on all of those typologies. In addition, this strategy sets out the vision for the borough's green spaces and the objectives arising from that, which are delivered via its action plan. In terms of financial implications, delivery of the action plan will be supported by external grant funding, Section 106 commuted sums from developers, and via the new community infrastructure levy. Such funds will be used to enhance and improve the existing play areas and open spaces, and also create new ones. And the current ongoing maintenance of the green spaces detailed in the strategy is included within the Parks and Street Care approved annual base budget, which is renewed and reviewed each year. Obviously, due to the economic downturn, there is less available money, and we will see less investment over the next few years. But nevertheless, with efficiencies and external funding through friends of groups and local community groups, it enables the council to draw down extra funding, which we then match fund. So it shouldn't halt our ambition in any way to continue to deliver our green spaces. And so the recommendation is to approve the green space strategy for Gedling 2021-26 as set out in Appendix 1.
Thanks, Mel. And anybody that's looked at the document, I'll bring Henry in a minute. And Peter, were you indicating?
Please, yes, John.
Yeah, I'll bring you in first. Oh, there's a whole raft now. Just a minute. I'll bring you in first in a minute. The green spaces, and hopefully this will attract some government, because this is a Labour council trying to deliver this with again, and I know we've been harbouring on about it today, but we haven't got extra funding. We try to use different resources, as Mel said. The friends groups have been particularly helpful and we work very well with them to facilitate lots of things, from playgrounds through to open spaces to tree planting to all sorts of things. And I was pleased the other day when Michael, one of our gardeners, was saying that we've exceeded the manifesto promise of 500 trees. We were well over 1,000 now, which I think is in this day and age, and bearing in mind what's happened in the last 18 months, we've done really well to do that, and more will come. I'm going to come into Peter first, and then we'll move to Henry. Peter.
Thank you, Lady. Can I just, first of all, before I say anything, I think we ought to give a big thanks to our staff who produced this report. All the work what's gone into it is absolutely fantastic. And what we have done in Gedling Borough Council with this document is to make sure we've got our green country back again. We need to bring it back. I spoke to Maloney this morning about what we would like to do to provide some more trees in the borough. We've got 3 fabulous country parks, which are all oversubscribed, but we've got space where we can put some more trees in. We're looking to do that. We want to make Gedling the greenest part of the borough, greenest part of the county for the size that we are. And I think what we're doing with this report is trying that particular subject to the nest. We're going to do this, and we're going to do it as best of our ability. We're going to prove that what we do at this Borough Council is second to none. And I'm very pleased and very honoured to be in a position to move this document. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Henry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say this is a fantastic report. I'd just like to say massive thanks to all the work that's been put into this, and also massive thanks to all the workers on the ground that have been working around the borough within our parks and green spaces. I think parks and green spaces are going to be absolutely crucially important moving through as we move out of the post-COVID pandemic. I think they're going to be really important in terms of health and well-being. mental health, physical well-being, and just generally speaking, providing people with an opportunity to go out and get that fresh air and exercise and so forth. I think we've done really well, particularly with the amount of work that's gone into investing in our play areas. I know that Killissick Recreation Ground shortly is going to have some new play equipment. We've done a phenomenal amount of work with a lot of the community groups, including the Friends groups, which we can be very proud of. I think open spaces. We need more open space. We need more green areas. I'm really proud of the allotments that we have actually across the borough. Phenomenal allotments, phenomenal access as well in terms of again providing that health and well-being, physical and both emotional and mental well-being. So yeah, really proud of this document. A lot of work gone into this, and it's really important that we do whatever we can to work with our local community groups to try and get additional funding. But also, I think we need to put some pressure on the government as well, because a lot of the work that's gone on here has been done without any additional help from the government in terms of funding for our local council. So really proud of this document, but we need to be putting pressure on the government to provide some more funding for us locally to enhance our parks and green spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, you're on mute.
Being part of the community and the community development, I think it's an absolutely fantastic and beneficial to the community and to Gedling Borough. How you pay this sort of investment back, as in how they appreciate and use these facilities. I'll name some of the parks that have been done, which is probably like Breckhill, Cavendish Road, Foxhill Road, where they've got new facilities. I can't think of many that haven't had some form of work put on them. And the main part is, I don't know what the community would have done in the circumstances of the last year and a bit, but I think we would have been in a different, darker place if they hadn't got those facilities to use and to get some fresh air. It's helped in the social well-being because they're meeting other people, they're learning in with things. And I think the way that we've done it with the underfunding, and don't let's be in any disrespectful way, we are underfunded. Can't get away from that, whether it's permanent, whether it's a position that they want to put us in, but we will work our own way around these problems. We have worked our way around these problems because we work together with all the staff. We do a partnership with the county councillors, and we do a partnership with the borough councillors. And as a team, we're not anywhere near unbeatable. We're beatable. We'll not get nowhere near us. And to do what we've done, I don't know whether we've got wizards, witches or whom, but we still keep coming through and doing what the people of Gedling want. Not just in one particular part, it's done in the whole of the borough. And nobody can say that we're not involved in the whole of the borough. How we do it, we'll probably explain in another 10 years' time or 40 when things come out. But a lot of it is that you've got to appreciate and accept that we're the only council that are moving forward with a forward plan and moving into the future and looking after the whole of the community. Thank you.
Thanks, Gary, for your passion there. As people listening to this or seeing it can see the passion in our cabinet members' faces. Vivian. Viv.
Oh, I like it, John. Vivian.
Yeah, it's like it. I thought it's not Sunday, is it? I'm a William on a Sunday.
Okay. Yeah, can I thank all the staff and cabinet members, obviously, in terms of Councillor Barnes and co for the work they've done on this. What an excellent plan. I mean, let's be honest, this time last year, did we realise how important our open spaces were going to be in terms of for our families during this pandemic? I mean, they have been an absolute lifeline for our children, young people and families that have kept us all going. Let's be honest. What have we all done every day to keep ourselves sane is walk and go through our green spaces. And that's the thing that certainly kept me going. So they've been, you know, they are so important. They are, I echo what Gary has just said in terms of our lifeline, in terms of our open spaces. I'd like to pay credit to our friends as well, because I think, like Mel has said, the Friends of have done an awful lot of work to, you know, to work with us so that we can get, I mean, it's a shame that we have to have Friends of to be able to get enough money to be able to improve our open spaces, but what a difference they've made. And personally, to my Councillor McCrossan, Ron McCrossan and me, in terms of Breckhill Park, just seeing how well it's being used. I mean, we go past it most days, and the difference, because it was a really, you know, tired equipment that's been brought to life, and it's made a huge difference. So I just think the work that's going on is fantastic. Just one thing, you know, that Councillor McCrossan and I have been doing is, as you're aware, we cycle quite a lot. And what we would like to see, and again, this is a plea to our county council to say to the county council, the important thing for us is that we can connect our open spaces and that people can cycle safely to our open spaces. At the minute, there is an issue with actually trying to create the connectivity with getting on the bikes and going to parks and safely journeying there. And I noticed on the survey that actually people travelling by bike to get to our open spaces is quite small. And I can understand it being small because our road system at times is quite dangerous. And I think, you know, my plea would be to the county council, come on, let's start developing more bike lanes in our borough so that we can connect all our open spaces. We can reduce our carbon footprint, because one of the things in terms of climate change is to get people out of their cars onto public transport, onto bikes. And I think to get more and more people using our spaces by going by bike means that we've got to be sure that there is a safe passage. And at the minute, there isn't, because we don't have that connectivity. The county have not prioritised, it seems, to myself and Councillor Ron McCrossan, because we go out and about trying to see these connectivities. And I know that we're working really hard now on a route through to the country park from Arnold to take us through into the country park, and also going through into Netherfield, down onto the river, through onto the embankment. That's what we want to see more of. A lot more connectivity, get people out of their cars and get people travelling either on foot or public transport or by bike. So, but thank you for your great work.
Thank you, Viv. Michael?
Yeah, just want to echo what Viv said and others have said, and Gary's absolutely right. There's no keeping this council down. You know, you can throw all sorts of cuts at us, you can throw all sorts of barriers and hurdles as a central government, but we'll carry on investing with the little we have left. I want to start, John, just by saying, because I think this needs to be said, and it needs to be said loud and clear, to you, Mel, and to your very small but perfectly formed team, what an absolutely outstanding job you do for our borough. And I don't think it can be said enough. Most of the roads are clean. Yes, we know there are hot spots that are grot spots, but we'll get to them. We'll deal with them. We've got hundreds of volunteers across the borough now stepping forward, litter picking, wanting to clear them up, and they deserve our thanks as well. Right across, you know, the Willow Farm Action Group, Emma Green in Killisset, you know, the people who've been going out along Collick Loop Road, the people in Bestwood Country Park, the parish councillors up there, Marge and Henry go out very regularly, Jenny, you know, Gary's been out with people, the Carlton Hill action team, Ron McCrossan as a councillor and Peter have been pulling these people together, and all those who have been litter picking, including the young children over the last year and before that, deserve our plaudits. But you, Mel, and your team deserve the highest praise. You've got a really small resource. We've got streets that are by and large spick and span. We've got more green spaces than you could shake a stick at for a borough like ours within the urban area as well as in the green belt. And they are bloody well looked after as well. You know, if I look in my own area, the Calverton Nature Reserve, the Hobbocks Nature Reserve, the St Mary's Recreation Ground, the Killisset Recreation Ground, where Marge and Henry have worked with Natalie Drury and Karen Exton and her team to get a brand new play park, just as Ron and Viv have done alongside colleagues in the Breck Hill Friends of, tremendous job to get a new play park. The Leopold allotments, you know, where the council works very closely with the association up there. They've done a superb job, stunning views down across Lammings Lane out towards, you know, the Lakeside Tower, which is a beautiful part of our borough. And I think the thing for me is we should be immensely proud, Mel, of you and your team. You know, you should make sure that all of them know just how proud as elected members in the community are of the way in which you've looked after those areas. I was out last week at the Calverton Nature Reserve with Mel and Terry Ball, and we've got some positive plans that we're going to put in place for that beautiful nature reserve that used to be run by the Wildlife Trust, and we've now taken responsibility for. But also we've got other plans. We've got a small copse or a grove in an urban area in my ward off Georgia Drive. We secured that off Langridge after they cut down a few oak trees. They were kind enough to give us a fund, and we're going to turn that into a nature and bird copse where we're attracting some more wildlife, and we're going to teach young people about the importance of the planet. And I think Viv hit the nail on the head. You know, this last year, our great outdoors and our green spaces have become our new pubs and our post offices and our new high streets and our new living rooms. They're the places where we've met our friends and our colleagues and our families safely. They're the places where we've met our fellow dog walkers and our fellow residents. They're the places where we've passed the time of the day. And I think coming out of this awful pandemic in the year to come, our residents will be putting more store on protecting the precious green space we've got, investing in it, protecting the beautiful wildlife that we have in this country, and this council stands alongside them. And I think that is no better illustrated, John, than the ambition that you've set out in terms of the new green lawn, further expanding the country park over to Digby Park so that we can create more green space that people can walk around in. We are absolutely blessed in this borough, I think, with play parks, with green spaces, with nature reserves, with woodlands. We've got ambition to plant more trees. We've got ambition to plant more wildflower corridors and bee and pollinator friendly plants. But I just think you, Mel, and Jane Richardson and Terry Ball and the entire team behind you, which is a small team, do an absolutely superb job. And I think this document, stewarded by Peter with a foreword by the leader, brings it all together in such a beautiful way. And I think you should be really, really proud. This, for me, this is the absolute best of what local government should be about. It's about investing in our communities and looking after the places we live. And I just think it's a really, really, really good document. And sorry for going on about it, John, but I feel very passionate about this. We have to protect this planet. There's one of it. We only get one chance at this. And this is not just something we can leave to national government that seems pretty uninterested in this, or to international agencies or to multinational companies. Everybody has to play their part in this, and that includes the councils. And I just think what we're doing here in our green spaces is playing our part in looking after our planet. So thank you, Mel, and thank you to your team as well. Brilliant document, a brilliant piece of work, and really good work you're doing day in, day out on behalf of our community.
Thanks, Michael. Yes, it's, I mean, you know, you can see it, feel it, can't you? You can feel the energy with people wanting to get involved. And I'm looking out to my office here at the Civic Centre. I see people walking around here with little packs on. They'd never think of doing that. They've got the lunch packs because you can't go into a cafe, you can't go into a pub. And I'm turning a blind eye if somebody uses the bushes to because the toilets aren't open or something. But there are lots of people. There are children on the swings. There are people looking at the lake, etc. It's an absolute beautiful, beautiful sight to see, and it's in immaculate condition. And that is, as you say, to a small and very dedicated team that are there. And really, I'm hopeful. I'm looking at the document again. I think this document needs to go, and we need to land this with somebody at government level and say, we want to work with you. This is what we've done without or very little government support. I don't want the MP for this area standing there with this in front of him and saying, didn't we do well? No, we could do well. We could do even better if he came onto our side a little bit and we met in the middle. And we give us some of that money to, we'll show you the way forward there. I was particularly disturbed recently because somebody told me that our local opposition, the Conservatives, had put something out, probably because the election's coming up, that it was their idea over the country park. Wrong, that was. It wasn't their idea over the country park. They voted against it. It's on record. They need to check that. But that's we can have a battle forever on it. The beautiful thing about it is, you've all mentioned areas. There's one next week, which I don't think was mentioned. The Conway Road one next week has been a big success. There's no doubt in that. 2 bowling greens, it probably would have been ploughed up by under some other organisations, but they're kept there. We've now got a first-class facility of a play area, so that's going ahead there. Valeside Gardens don't get mentioned a great deal, Colin, but Valeside Gardens, amongst them, a sort of private area there. That was in Councillor Lawrence's area. That was renewed. The play equipment down there, and is used very well. The country park itself, I'm very pleased last week to go there and highlight the fact of the I think it was Jenny's idea actually, the orchard. So when they make some of the cider off the apples and things like that, all native trees apart from pears. I'm not an expert on this, and you'll soon tell. There are plenty. All those are all Nottinghamshire apple trees, but the pear trees, there isn't one native to Nottingham. So this is a challenge to anybody listening to this. If there is one, we'll plant one. And also some damson trees, which you've got to keep Gary off because he's rather addicted to damsons apparently. But one of the things there, and one of the thanks that we put out, is that we ought to be thanking, there are lots of individuals who make contributions, buy a tree. You know, it might represent somebody that's passed, it might be for some particular memorial or something like that. I asked last week, there was a tree up there planted, a nice tree. It's a cherry tree, I'm told by our ranger up there, Rob. And he tells me the cherry tree that's planted there was paid for. We planted it by a lady who appreciated what we were doing in that park. And not only did she give us a tree, she gave us £1,000 to invest in the park. And I thought that was, you know, the type of residents that really, really, really do look after and feel for what we're trying to achieve there. I've just looked, I've got on my other screen here, I'm just seeing it's being flashed up on the BBC News now that, you know, we're looking about greening things up. It's all the green agenda, it's climate change, everything else. Well, the government now just sneakily cut down to 2,500. If you're thinking of buying an electric car, don't buy one, because they've just cut the subsidy down to 2,500. There's a lot of things said on there that's then changed later, which we see with the vaccine. Anyway, I think is there anybody else on there? There's no one else. Do you want to add anything to it, Mel? If you can get through the door after all that praise.
No, yeah, thank you for the praise. It's much appreciated, and I'll make sure it's passed on to my staff accordingly.
Brilliant, thank you. So on page 47, we have the recommendation. I'll move up. Someone like to second it?
Seconded.
Thank you. And we are agreed? We are agreed. Thank you. And then we're moving over to item 8, which is the forward plan. Just move that. I think we're there just for noting. Okay, seconded. Agreed. And that is it. Thank you very much. Sorry about all the hiccups. If people did get this, so, you know, screens regard, just lost half a screen. I thought, where have they all gone? And anyway, it's suddenly appeared now to the ether. So I don't know, it's everybody. No, it can't be school children. They're at school doing the work now, aren't they? So whatever. Our Americans come online or whatever like that. We get through it. So thanks to all the officers, and thanks to all those people that are supporting us. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, Leader.